As far as the high-stakes presidential election is concerned, we interrogate those conspiracies that are alleged to have been in motion at the time in the course of the next 2 hours. But first, let's take a look at the news. In a bid to curb tax cheats, the Kenya Revenue Authority is looking into ways in which it can store, track and match data on cash transactions that flow on platforms such as M-Pesa and other online platforms. The move, however, is dependent on Senate's approval of the Data Protection Bill as it borders on infringement of privacy. Kenyans have received the news with mixed reactions, as NTV's Sydney Chazima reports.
As part of the proposals contained in the draft budget policy statement for the year 2023, the KRA is angling to integrate its tax collection system with big telcos operating in the country in a bid to expand the tax base and turn around the country's economy. This move will see the taxman store, track and match data from M-Pesa transactions, PesaLink and PayPal amongst others, and flag any inconsistencies filed in tax returns. Kenya's informal sector is at the pinnacle focus of this move by KRA, with many Kenyans said to be happy to accept direct cash sent to their mobile wallets as opposed to using paybill numbers whose deductions help fill up the tax basket.
Hawafai kuchunguza juu. Sisi ni watu wa biashara ndogo ndogo na huwa tunalipa kanjo, tunalipa zingine za nini.
Mtu anaingia ndani anajua mambo yangu ya siri ya biashara yangu, si vibaya. Tena hata kama KRA inataka taxes kwa M-Pesa mimi naona hapo haifai hata kidogo.
Equally, the growing digital economy in the country has seen lots of young people rake in revenues that remain unmonitored and hence are not taxed.
What the government is looking for, the government wants to come into my compound and assume they lost money there, and they want to seek permission to sweep the whole compound to look for money which they have no idea what they are looking for.
In the past 6 months ending June 2022, Kenyans have transacted a whopping 6.3 trillion shillings through mobile money.
Kama mimi nakuanga kama ni treasurer wa a certain group ama kumobilize fund, for example for wale wako na bills, medical bills, unajua tunatumia, wakishika mtu kama huyo wanaweza kuwa wanaanza kumuingilia ya kwamba ya kwamba anatumia M-Pesa ama anatumia hizo mobile money transfer na sio pesa zake.
This move by KRA to monitor M-Pesa and other online transactions comes barely 3 months after President William Ruto questioned why KRA had only 7 million Kenyans registered in their tax base.
There are only 7 million people with KRA PIN numbers. At the same time, in the same economy, Safaricom's M-Pesa has 30 million registered customers transacting billions daily.
This proposal, however, is seen as an infringement to privacy.
If I realize even my bank is sharing information with the government without my knowledge, I should quit that bank because that is my personal information.
And is reliant on the Senate's approval of the Data Protection Bill, which ensures that those entrusted with data use it fairly and responsibly. Sydney Chazima, NTV.
I wonder what your thoughts are. The hashtag is AMLiveNTV, or you can tweet me directly on @Burrows or @NTV Kenya. President William Ruto may by today assent to the IEBC Amendment Bill of 2022, setting into motion the process of filling vacant slots at the country's poll agency, IEBC. This is after the Senate, in a special sitting yesterday afternoon, approved the bill in its original form, effectively roping in the Public Service Commission and the Political Parties Liaison Committee into the process of nominating one member each into the selection panel. But as NTV's Ibrahim Karanja now reports, the process was not without its fair share of drama that saw the withdrawal of a proposed alteration and the quashing of another by senators.
Despite drawing a debate on whether or not to give it a stake in the nomination of members into the IEBC selection panel, the Public Service Commission will henceforth be nominating one person into the 7-member panel, mandated to shortlist and conduct interviews for appointment into the IEBC. The political parties liaison committee will also be making one nomination as the Parliamentary Service Commission loses 2 out of its initial 4 slots in the new law that now only awaits President William Ruto's assent. Senators had on Thursday raised concerns on whether granting the Public Service Commission a slot would fill the selection panel with possible allies of the establishment.
Marsabit County.
The Senate's Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee had earlier attempted to alter the amendment bill from its original form when it proposed that the 2 slots for the Parliamentary Service Commission be reduced to 1, as 1 more slot to be added to the political parties liaison committee in form of majority and minority parties, the proposal facing a pushback from senators.
You want to legislate ourselves out of work, surely. How can you be a member of parliament and you don't believe that we can rise above petty parties and politics and do that which is good for the country?
I would like to withdraw the proposed amendments from the floor of the House.
Liaison Committee.
Nominated Senator Catherine Muma, who is also a member of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, also had her own alteration, seeking to completely strike out the Public Service Commission from the list.
But also in terms of gender, because for the first time it is making it clear that even the PSC slots being 2, 1 man, 1 woman, and from the PPLC, 1 man and 1 woman, and representatives of the minority and majority parties.
Let's not package the panel with people whose allegiance is to the executive. Let's try and create a panel of people who are not tied to the executive of the day.
And removing Public Service Commission from this panel, then that is, I think, I don't think it is the right thing to do.
By allowing PSC, Public Service Commission, to participate in the selection panel or to appoint somebody to represent their interest in the selection panel, we will be giving the selection panel an opportunity to tap into the professionalism and the expertise offered by an independent commission which is best positioned to speak into personnel matters and development of human resource.
In fact, the Public Service Commission, being a partisan organization in the manner in which it is constituted, would represent an imbalance in terms of the public perception as to the fairness of this particular panel.
You are here today because you are elected on UDA, because you are elected on ODM, Jubilee and so on. But 4 years from now, you have no idea on which party you will be elected. Politics is dynamic. And therefore, just to root yourself there that this is the position that my coalition or my party wants me to push, you are refusing the fact that politics is dynamic.
The passage of the amendment bill by the bicameral parliament now setting in motion the process of appointing the next crop of IEBC commissioners. Upon assenting to the bill, the president will declare vacant the slots at IEBC through a gazette notice and will appoint a selection panel in line with the new changes. The change in law is due to a petition at the courts by Busia Senator Okiya Omtata, in which parts of the principal IEBC Act were declared illegal. Justice Anthony Mrima naming as unconstitutional various clauses, including Parliament's 4 slots into the selection panel by the Parliamentary Service Commission. Ibrahim Karanja, NTV.
For the second day running yesterday, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leaders are insisting a dossier by an anonymous IEBC official is the smoking gun on the alleged rigging of the presidential election in August last year. And as NTV's Brian Mushu reports, the Azimio Brigade does not outline its next course of action, even after being in possession of what it calls, quote-unquote, a bombshell.
Claims by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition are still rife, indicating that its leader, Raila Odinga, won the presidential election last August. The leaders from the faction indicated that Raila Odinga beat William Ruto by more than 2 million votes. They claim that Raila won the presidency with 8,170,353 votes, amounting to 57.3% of the total vote, against his closest rival William Ruto, who garnered 5,915,973 votes, which is 41.66% of all votes. They claim the dossier has come from an electoral official whom they did not intend to disclose their personality or identity for their own safety. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC) declared William Ruto the winner of the presidential vote after he got 7,176,141 votes, amounting to 50.49% of the total vote, against Raila Odinga, who got 6,942,930 votes, which is 48.85% of the total vote. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, who was flanked by other leaders of the Azimio la Umoja coalition leadership, endorsed the dossier, saying that last year's election was shambolic.
We did so much within Mount Kenya region, and it was unbelievable to be told that Raila Amolo Odinga only got 800,000 votes from our region. When you continue analyzing the report, because that's the responsibility of every one of us, you'll come across figures that will shock you.
The data released by the whistleblowers is a bombshell that compels every Kenyan of goodwill to ask themselves if indeed we still have a democracy. Thirdly, according to Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, the data calls into question the outcome of the presidential elections and the credibility and legitimacy of our entire electoral system and infrastructure.
However, leaders from the ruling Kenya Kwanza government want the Azimio camp to take their seats, eat humble pie and accept the loss.
Kenyans woke up early in the morning, they went to the polls, they elected their leaders, na walifanya hivyo kwa hiari yao. Tuache hii maneno ya sisi viongozi kila wakati tunazungusha hawa wananchi ambao ni wadosi wetu katika maneno ya uchaguzi ambayo haikuishi. Hawa wananchi walichaguana na hiyo story ikaisha.
The anonymous whistleblower from IEBC, according to the Azimio team, is fingering former IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati, commissioners Boya Molu and Abdi Gulie, as well as IEBC CEO Hussein Marjan for the bungled election. The two commissioners, alongside the chairman, have officially left the commission as they insist they are clear of any wrongdoing. Brian Mushiri, NTV, Nairobi.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has also waded in on the matter, dismissing the assertions by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leaders as hot air. In a tweet last night, he stated there is a saying in life that speaks volumes: the winners celebrate and move on, while the losers get stuck in explanations of self-denial. Let's listen in to his response at a joint interview with journalists yesterday.
I want to get your thought on what you think of this dossier.
First of all, I think it's hot air. Nothing but hot air. Where was this whistleblower when the matters were in the Supreme Court? There are some people who are actually testing the imaginations of Kenyans.
The president did speak of an alleged plot to hijack, abduct and murder the immediate former chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Wafula Chebukati. Who are these individuals?
First of all, the president never speaks in vain. The president that I know, who is there now, William Ruto, he does not speak in vain. And all I can tell you is that time will tell.
Is this not the time?
Time will tell.
Will we see a formation of a commission of inquiry?
I cannot predict how this process will end, but I can tell you that time will tell. And what is important in my remarks is that when we go forward, what can we do as a people to make sure that we don't go through this kind of threats again?
All right, let's take a look at the news diary now. And President William Ruto begins a two-day tour of Trans Nzoia. The Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, to launch new fertilizer subsidies. The judiciary to give its views on the budget at the Kenyatta International Convention Center. And the Education Cabinet Secretary, Ezekiel Mashogu, set to release the 2022 KCSE results. A lot of parents and students definitely looking, shall I say forward? Some may be looking forward to it with trepidation. Well, we'll see how that plays out. Let's take a look at the dailies now. And I was trying to log on to my Twitter. Just a reminder that you can send in your tweets to @NTV Kenya, @OBurrows, and I will read them out as the conversation continues. Those statements made by Musalia Mudavadi, those made by Azimio with regard to the dossier on the alleged rigging of the presidential poll informs our conversation today. But before we get into that, allow me to introduce my one panelist out of the four who's made it into studio this far. Right on time, Omulo Junior, Director, Political Affairs, ANC.
Thank you, Olive.
Karibu
I
sana.
always keep time, and it's my, I'm copying my boss.
You're copying your boss.
He's always very, very early, especially when doing his duty as a president. So I'm emulating his character and also what he has set for this country.
All right, so he's emulating President William Ruto, keeping time, being punctual. All right, front page of the Daily Nation. First, budget winners and losers. Mobile money users, landlords and consumers are among the biggest losers in the 3.641 trillion shilling budget. In draft 2023 policy statement published yesterday, President William Ruto has prioritized education, health, infrastructure, and national security, making a significant increase in their allocations and underscoring the pivotal role he expects the sectors to play in enhancing Kenya's socio-economic growth. I see here the winners are farmers, businesses, jobs, disciplined forces, and safety net. When we look at farmers' access to cheap fertilizer as state-funded subsidy continues, MSMEs, as far as businesses are concerned, to benefit from state loans, including the Hustler Fund. Where jobs are concerned, 30,000 teachers and more healthcare workers to be recruited. Disciplined forces win through a review of salaries to reflect the rising cost of living, and a state increases cash transfer for elderly or to elderly and vulnerable groups. Losers, again, businesses. Taxman to seal VAT payment loopholes to squeeze more cash. We see here mobile money. Taxman to snoop on mobile money transactions to catch tax cheats. Hustlers, net cast wider to reap 2.8 trillion shillings from informal businesses. I see here landlords, rental properties will be mapped to collect more income tax, and consumers, suspension of subsidies on fuel, electricity, and food to raise cost of living. The topic that's informing our conversation, 2022 poll. Azimio demands audit of IEBC servers. Coalition has challenged the Electoral Commission to allow a forensic audit of its servers to dispel claims by a whistleblower that Mr. Raila Odinga won the 2022 presidential election, saying it is not too late to get the truth on the actual votes garnered by both Mr. Odinga and President William Ruto in the August 9th, 2022 polls. On the ticker, interesting story here, robbery, how robber who fell in love with his victim botched gang's mission, and details there on page 3 of the Daily Nation. But Omulo, I'm curious, before I flip over from this page, this says that Mr. Raila Odinga says it's not too late to get the truth on the actual votes garnered by him and President William Ruto. Is it too late in your opinion, or is there still time to clarify this matter?
Even wondering which truth. Actually, nowadays there's a famous word in town called hot air, because Kenyans have moved on. We are currently focusing on production, value addition, creation of employment. I think all these matters were determined by the Supreme Court. If they have evidence, they would They could have taken it even earlier when they were presenting their petition to Supreme Court. So it is too late, and Kenyans are not going to focus on the elections. If there is anything to go by, I think Mr. Kioni could have presented an evidence. What we saw was a paper which is just innuendos, propaganda, stories that are meant to cover their ground. And actually having, heard what Ruto said, that Chebukati was almost kidnapped, was almost killed. So, they are trying to divert attention of Kenyans. And that is politics. You have to play politics to appease your supporters. So there's nothing really that we need to focus on.
So you say hot air?
There is no, that is hot air.
All right, but is there still time for justice to be done? Because the Supreme Court has to decide these matters, presidential petitions, within very strict timelines. So very many times, even the petitioners are working within a very short time to garner all the material they require to bolster their case.
Actually, there's a constitutional timeline for that. And you are there, you're given that timeline to collect all the evidence.
And what I'm saying is, isn't it a very short time?
No. I think, Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. And having determined all these issues, if they want an audit, I think it is a process that now we need to start, because these people have been talking about IEBC. They disbanded the ECK. They always hound all the chairmen who are there. So it is a story that revolves, and that's why we are saying we are not going to focus on election every time. Let us give Kenyans peace. Let us give them time to focus on the agenda of Kenya Kwanza government. We have settled. We have a new president. Let him settle. Let them support. Let them criticize whatever we are doing, because it is not going to change anything. It's not going to change the president. It's not going to change anybody. So right now they should focus on the process that is already in parliament, that president is going to sign, and then we get new commissioners. That is what they should focus on.
All right, but your party leader, your boss, you call him your boss, is the one who also raised matters through the presidential poll when he talked about Chebukati. You've referenced it yourself here. Sure. Alleged abduction, alleged conspiracy to eliminate him, to install somebody who's more amenable at the helm of IEBC. Aren't you guys also reviving things you're telling us we should have left in the past? And do you support calls for a commission of inquiry so that we know, we are clear as Kenyans, what really transpired?
Actually, forming a commission of inquiry is not a priority in our list, even though it was promised. But for now, we want to focus on what is important to Kenyans. And that's why, is always in a football match, referee is there. The losers will always make noise. They will hate the referee. They will have faults. The winners will always celebrate, and they will always praise the referee. So it is a normal game, and that is politics. You cannot have a perfect IEBC, a perfect referee that will be praised by all Kenyans. You must have a section of Kenyans or leaders who will always fault the leaders of IEBC or independent bodies.
But is it fair to drop a bombshell? Because I mean, that was a bombshell.
Actually, it is not true.
And then tell us that we move on.
You see, when we say the burden of proof lies with the complainants. Those who are saying that they won the election, the onus is on them. Let them prove that they got the datas. Let us see the datas, the sources. Who was the whistleblower? Maybe Kamago, we don't know. So we are waiting. So it is for them to prove and tell us that they have all the evidence. Otherwise, for now, we treat them as propaganda, hot air, innuendos, all those things, stories and lies. That is what we can say as Kenyans.
All right, I have two analysts who've joined us in studio. I'm curious, in the interest of fair play, what their thoughts on the matter. I'll give them a few moments to get settled. Let me flip over, take a look at what we have on the front page of the Taifa Leo. And Taifa Leo's front page reads as such: Ruto kufuliza bilioni mbili kila siku. And then we take a look, or rather they go into a bit more detail on the budget proposals. And this is bajeti ya Uhuru ya mwaka wa 2022 kumalizia 2023, and then the proposed budget from the Ruto administration. Rais William Ruto pichani atalazimika kukopa bilioni 1.9 kila siku kwa kipindi cha mwaka mmoja kufadhili bajeti yake ya kwanza ya shilingi trilioni 3.6. All right. So is this accurate? 2 billion shillings every day? All right. So we'll interrogate that further. And let me take a look at the Business Daily now. Front page of the Business Daily: users allowed to sue Safaricom over clients' bank details access. Telcos subscribers get nod to join class action suit. Lawyers want firm stopped from collecting users' bank data. The High Court has allowed millions of Safaricom subscribers to join a class action suit against the My eyesight there is giving me a challenge. Much better. The High Court has allowed millions of Safaricom subscribers to join a class action suit. The telecoms operator over class action suit against the telecoms operator over clause in the SIM card registration rules that allows the firm to collect bank details of mobile phone users. Clause 3.2.1 in the data privacy statement, which subscribers filled as part of the re-registration process, states that telecom operators can, quote, collect and store information including credit or debit card information on bank account numbers, SWIFT codes, or other banking information. So more detail on page 2 of the Business Daily. Speaking of data, KRA to track landlords spy M-Pesa accounts for extra 375 billion shillings. The Kenya Revenue Authority will conduct a census of landlords' properties and seek direct access to M-Pesa transactions in efforts to catch tax cheats and raise an additional 375 billion shillings for the year starting July. The Treasury has disclosed in its budget planning document for the new fiscal year that KRA's tax system will be integrated with those of telecommunication firms. So I'm curious what my panelists make of this, but first I will take them back to the front page of the Daily Nation. So I'll put a pin in that one, but we'll come back to that. And with me in studio, let me just pull up the poster I shared yesterday. Quick second for me just to pull it from my WhatsApp. There we go. And download it so that we are all on the same page. Here we go. High stakes presidential poll. Conspiracies laid bare. Let me zoom in on my panelists so that in case you've not met them before, I can introduce them officially to you. I've already introduced Omulo Jr. to you, Director Political Affairs, ANC. We have Dennis Mbanda in studio sitting next to him as well. He is the political analyst. Kidi Mwaga, governance and policy expert, and Askan Kamili, I'm sure, is not far behind. All right, so gentlemen, front page of the Daily Nation, if you can grab your copy. And 2022 poll, Azimio demands audit of IEBC servers. Raila Odinga says that it is not too late to get to the truth on the actual votes garnered by himself and President William Ruto in the August 9th, 2022 polls. Dennis, haya ni mambo yamepitwa na wakati.
Good morning, how are you?
Morning.
Happy New Year to our viewers. Haya si maneno ambayo yamepitwa na wakati. Ideally, what we demand is a forensic audit. Yeah, if you look at the Kriegler report 207, one of the ways to manage electoral violence, rather to manage electoral information systems, was to allow media to cover, rather to get access to the systems. But up to date, that has never happened before. Because it is with the media that we're able to get exactly what happens inside the systems. So we cannot know the truth until we audit the IBC systems. During the case of Azimio at the Supreme Court, some of the affidavits, and if you keenly read or rather went through the affidavits, we were requesting to be given, rather the Azimio was requesting to be given access to the IBC servers, so that we be able, they would be able to get to know the data and what transpired. But that did not happen. So if Azimio was supposed to be given, rather is given forensic audit access, we'll be able to know what exactly transpired today. Yes. What is actually shocking is 4 months down the line, the country is supposed to move forward, and we are here today. But electoral reforms are mandatory for a country to achieve its democratic principles and move forward. But today we are still talking about electoral reforms over and over and over. In my idea, or rather in my opinion, I feel that elections are very expensive. About 800 billion, rather 8 billion of taxpayers' money being used to run elections. The IBC commissioners are in office for 5 years to prepare for an election, and then what happens? Election day preparedness in this country is something that needs to be talked about.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. What are your thoughts, Kidi, on the subject?
Good morning, Olive, and it's good to see you in a new year.
Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I may be said that it's a bit
the year
late.
started for you on a very high note. It shows on your face. I would want to pick it where my brother has left it, and I would want to speak to what I would call missed opportunities. I will tell you that I worked for and with the NASA team in 2017 as a far much younger man than I am today. And in 2017, we had believed that the time for Raila presidency had come. But then when the matter ended up at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court nullifying that election, that is how that determination by the Supreme Court buoyed our young spirits then. And we believed that we had a chance to reconcile this country to its highest ideals. I said I want to speak about missed opportunities. So then when we get to 2018 to 2022, what I would want to call that our cooperation with the government under what was called handshake then was supposed to help us achieve certain goals, governance goals. But I would say that we failed to compartmentalize issues, so that when we were speaking about national unity, we should also have at the same time aggressively pushed for necessary reforms into the electoral body in how elections are managed. But we realized that we eventually attempted to do that through the BBI process. So we had a lot of issues that came together, and therefore that is where the missed opportunity lies. There is a reason why the Constitution, in its infinite wisdom or lack of it, specifies a timeline to the presidential election. So that number one, a contest, a dispute in relation to the election to the office of the president is then resolved within a certain timeline, and then people are able to rebuild. What is coming out today as the revelations are so weighty that you are unable to wish them away. As a young democracy, these revelations must be given the prominence they deserve, both by the people of Kenya and the Kenyan media. However, in the same vein and breadth, we, the people of Kenya, must also appreciate that we may not be able to relitigate the question of election to the office of the president, especially as it happened on 9th of August. Because the bodies that are mandated to pronounce themselves on this matter have spoken. This evidence, again, is also coming so late in the day. I want us that the only thing that then this revelation serves is that it possibly helps us to seek how to realign our democratic processes to the highest ideals of this country, so that we have a leadership that then does not have to grapple with questions of legitimacy or illegitimacy. Because if we continue to say that these figures, as Honorable Kioni was waving that sheet of paper, and say that that sheet of paper was more credible than the determination by the IEBC, than the determination of the Supreme Court, we would be setting our country to very dangerous trends and standards. Thank you.
All right, so we need to take a break. Let me just quickly show you what's on the front page of the Standard before we get now we get deeper into this conversation. The Standard: Ruto's radical plan to finance hustler budget. Government plans to monitor mobile money transactions so as to seal revenue leaks and broaden the tax base by catching evaders to raise 3.6 trillion shillings for Kenya Kwanza's first budget. I see on the left here, new claim awakens polls dispute ghosts. Opposition leaders call for a thorough audit of the August electoral process after a whistleblower claimed the results were doctored to deny their candidate Raila Odinga the win. Front page and I've remembered I will give you a chance on the other side of the break to also comment on the mobile money transaction monitoring. KRA to spy on M-Pesa data to meet tax target. The tax plan is expected to net 2.8 trillion shillings in the 2023-2024 financial budget. So Kenya Kwanza government unveils 3.6 trillion shilling budget. I am also curious what your thoughts are on this. If you'd like detail, you can visit the NTV Kenya YouTube channel. Earlier in the hour, we did play that report by Sydney Chazima. We got some sentiments of some Kenyans. What are your thoughts? You can rewatch that on our YouTube channel. So we take a break. When we come back, I hear from my panelists on this quote-unquote plan to spy on our mobile money transactions, and then we get proper into the discussion.
Why they call me sugar? It's because I bring the flavor, the heat, the spice and the vibes on Kenyan radio. When a song plays on my show, it moves from being a hot song to a hit to a classic. When I interview you, you become a household name. And for every brand that advertises on this show, they move from being a brand to the brand. If you want to be seen, felt and heard, you know where to be. This is a place every Monday to Friday on 96.3 Nation FM. It's the Nation FM Drive with yours truly, Anto, Neo, Soul. So kiss, mwah! Every other frequency, goodbye, and keep it right here, 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives.
Next on Daring Abroad.
I've actually just completed my master's in international journalism.
A tale of 3 beneficiaries of the prestigious Chevening Scholarship.
I recently joined the London School of Economics and Political Science.
Including your Daring Abroad host.
Yes, I lived here for 1 year, doing everything for myself, including cooking.
Birds of a feather. All journalists. All passed through the School of Information Sciences, Moi University.
I'm not the same person who left Kenya 1 year ago.
When you're in a place like this, you can't even be blessed accidentally. But you see, it is the perfect will of God for you to be aware of what is happening, such that it is not by accident. You know what is taking place, and you position yourself, and you see something coming and say, no, that one I will not allow it in my life.
Tazama Kiu kwenye Rembo TV.
Umeenda wapi? Leave me alone.
Recharge and get upgraded. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the morning fix this and every single Friday right here on NTV. Yes, it's about that time.
You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and two guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with the morning fix.
To studio, we are with Omulo Jr., Dennis Mbanda, Kirimwaga, Ascon Kamili, and we're saying Ascon did get the memo because the three gentlemen all have pocket squares, but regardless, they're all looking sharp this morning. All right, so here is a tweet posted by Martha Karua. Why would such a serious allegation of attempted kidnap and murder of IEBC chair be made 6 months after the election, and why is the allegation by okay, she calls him Mr. President William Ruto. She calls him Mr. Ruto. A third party and not by Chebukati himself is the question she's raising. Let's take a look at Musalia Mudavadi. He tweeted, there is a saying in life that speaks volumes. The winners celebrate and move on, while the losers get stuck in explanations of self-denial. But before we get into this, the top story on the Star: Carry to spy on M-Pesa data to meet tax target. So, gentlemen, what do you make of this? Is it taking things too far? Omulo?
Actually, about the allegation, I cannot...
Oh, no. Let's, I'm just going to divert you quickly, briefly, to this front page story on the Star. Do you have your Star?
Yes.
Carry to, quote, spy on M-Pesa data to meet tax target.
Actually...
Does it infringe on privacy?
Not that much, but I think it's the right thing to do, because in the previous government, what was lacking was strategies, clear frameworks on how to collect revenue. And it's very, very sad to know that almost 34 million Kenyans actually registered on M-Pesa, and only 7 million Kenyans have KRA PIN. So you wonder, are we lazy or are we not able to raise our revenue to build this country? So I believe I support this process, because Kenyans transact a lot of money through M-Pesa, and therefore there's a need for us also to get some cash to also develop this country. So it's a good move.
All right, Dennis?
I want to agree with my colleague here, with my friend Omulo. It is a very bold move. The government wants to increase the tax base. I think in itself is a very good stuff, especially now that if you look at the financial budget 2022, there was a deficit of about 900 billion. So in the bid to ensure that this deficit is managed, there's need of increasing the tax base. So in itself is a very good thing. But my concern would be the expenditure. Then the current government talked about cutting down the government expenditures, which in itself is a very good thing. But again, if you look at the what we call the recurrent expenditure within the government, the president promised that about 300 billion will be able to be cut down. But in itself is not something that it's self-sustaining. They have not been able to do that. So the KRA say that they're going to integrate their systems with that of the telecommunications in the country, I think it's a very good thing. But my concern is about the expenditure. Yesterday, when the president met with the women reps and talked about the NGAF, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, he said that he'll be able to increase in the next financial year, increase 1 billion to the financial plan from 2 billion to 3 billion. It's a good thing, but again, is it a priority in this country? If we want to cut down government expenditures, and again the president is talking about increasing the NGAF fund to 3 billion, it's not a priority. So my concern is about the expenditure of this money. Yes.
Okay. What do you have to say on the subject, Kidimwaga? Is it, a big brother scenario?
I will avoid speaking to the question of data protection, but I will want to speak to the fact that no country has ever taxed itself into prosperity. And therefore, as the new administration is seeking to widen the tax base, the question is, do we have those Kenyans who then should be able to pay that tax? Because majority of people, and especially after the last 10 years of the previous administration, more and more Kenyans have sunk into poverty. And we have witnessed a scenario of what I would call a diminishing middle class. So it means that when the government is saying that it is going to spy on your M-Pesa to try to bring you into within the tax bracket, the issue is, it is the young person, the olive working in the city, sending small monies to his relatives in the village, who then is, it is the same money that you send to your relatives that the government will seek to double tax. The priority, as we got it when this government was sworn in, was that they are going to invest in productivity. When there is productivity and growth, then it means more people are then handed the lifeline into the middle class, into what we call upward social mobility. And then when that happens, then it means that we are able to figure out how to bake a bigger bread, and then how to bring it within the reach of the taxman. But then when we seek to expand the tax bracket without a corresponding initiatives on how to spur growth, then it means that what we are going to see is a skyrocketing cost of living, and more families are going to be knocked out and left behind. Okay. And it is something that is not one of the reasons why we elect government into office. We elect government into office to ensure that those of us who, for no fault of their own, have been knocked out and left behind, are then accorded a helping hand on how to have, say, a better life for themselves and their children. And that is why we call the government as the most critical tool of social progression. Thank you.
All right, Ascon, your thoughts on the matter?
Thank you very much. I think my colleagues here have spoken to most of what I would have wanted to say about this, but basically the idea is how we could widen the tax base. We could generate more income, because you can only tax when there is income, or you can only tax, as Kidi says, when there is growth and development. You're not going to tax the people who don't have jobs that they're doing. So the strategy entirely should revolve around how the government can create jobs, how the government can give a chance to particularly the youth who are now out there wallowing in unemployment and struggling with so much of that. When we talk about innovation, when you talk about ICT, that is an industry that has not been tapped yet. But you're only going to tax an industry like that when you give opportunities in that industry. When you talk about using the internet to generate income, we know so many young people are doing it today. But how are you going to tax it if they're not certain in the manner in which you're going to cushion them from the shocks of maybe a downfall in that industry and such kind of factors? So the government needs to look into how generation of income increases and widen the tax base. Secondly, tax payment is a responsibility that every citizen should look at with pride. You should not look at it and think as though you're being punished for doing it. It is something that we need to know that for a country to move forward, a people must be taxed, and a people must also take part in developing the country. I also heard from my brother Dennis that he's not very convinced that the promise by the president to increase national government affirmative action fund is something important and necessary at this point. I think my idea would be the more the money that goes to the grassroots, whichever the route and whichever the direction, is just acceptable. It's just good enough. You know, we're talking about devolution. Devolution basically meant, you know, getting a big chunk and a higher percentage of money from the top to the bottom. Now, what we are doing right now, what I think the president is trying to do now, is to devolve more funds through other routes. You know, when you talk about the women reps getting 3 billion shillings more, we have women in the villages who I think need this money. While it might not appear that it is very important at this stage, I think whatever the route, whatever the direction that we take to send money to the grassroots, it should be acceptable, and it also should be something that we very readily embrace. Further, I think taxation is basically what drives an economy. But you cannot tax the people, as Kidi says, into poverty. So we should also watch on the fine line between taxation, where we keep increasing taxes. When you go to pay as you earn, it's up there. When you go to VAT, it's up there. Right now, before you can import even a machine that you intend to use for your agriculture, I think the taxes are out of this world. Importing cars in this country is something else. So we need to reduce on taking the tax up, and you know, emphasize more on widening the tax base, that is through production and you know, developing the base of the strata.
Okay, Dennis, you have something to add?
Yes. Recently, I think beginning the January 1st of this year, those, if you look at the financial budget amendment that was done to widen, rather to around the capital gain tax. Capital gain tax in itself, if you look at East Africa, if we were to do a comparative analysis within the East African region, I think Uganda, the capital gain tax is about 10%. And then recently,
is it because I thought Kenya was on the lower end of the scale?
We were 5%.
Yes.
And now, because of the amendment, now it is 15%.
Yes.
So this is an increase of 10%. So what is the intended, what we call the unintended consequence of this? One, it will negatively impact our economy because it will drive away investors and people who want to sell their properties, transfer shares. It's going to impact on the economy negatively. So in the bid to also widen the tax base, I think there are certain fundamental things that we need to also consider. For me, the capital gain tax, I don't think it should have been tripled, but because also we want to, Kenya is an economic hub in the Eastern African region. So I think there could have been considerations and thought process into this. So at least if it was doubled to 10%, the way Uganda does it, it could be fair enough. But tripling it, we're going to send away potential investors in this country.
And just to add some beef into what Mbanda says, the government of today, or the Kenyan government today, is very keen on investing on what we call the bottom up, the weakest of our economy, and that is a direction that is very welcome. There's a conversation even internationally right now that there is a group of capitalists at the top who are not properly taxed. And I think that is something that we should look at keenly. Just the other day, there was a report that the top 5 richest in this country are probably much richer than 40% of the population. You know, that's something that is very alarming. So if we only have 5 people who are that rich, and they're much richer than the entire population or half the population, do we question that are they properly taxed, or are they taxed to the levels that they're supposed to be taxed? You remember in the last regime, there was a complaint about a company that was, I think it was NCBA Bank or something.
The merger, yes.
The merger that then was exempted from a very big tax. You know, we need to look at such things, because if we're going to invest at the base, we need to look at how we are going to tax the base, but equally look keenly at how we are taxing the top to sustain the base in the middle.
Fair enough. Actually, the National Taxpayers Association did raise the question of wealth tax late last year. Okay, so Kidi, last word on this was followed by, did you have anything to add, Omulo? Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with Kidi. Because I want us to move us along.
I wanted to say that the question of taxation as a barrier into entry into the market is something that I think this administration may want to invest time to look at very intensely. You realize that in a proper society, in a proper democracy, there is a question of a free market But then it is only free market when taxation in itself is, or the tax environment is enabling to new businesses. When taxation remains a barrier, so that say if you want to invest 100,000, then about 30% of that money, or even 40%, goes to government upfront. That remains a barrier, and it hinders new businesses from getting into the market. Sometimes, or more often than not, taxation also, especially when it is retrogressive, ensures that ideas do not transition from ideas into businesses, and then businesses that then are sustainable. So I know the government finds itself in a tight spot, and it wants to raise revenue. But then even as it seeks to raise revenue, it must also be cautious not to overtax Kenyans to the point that, as my brother Mbada said, one, that investors want to run away from our market, from our economy. Secondly, that those who are already in the economy now begin falsifying their records to evade tax. Because when almost half of your profits are taxed, and you also have to figure in operational cost that has gone high, in part because of the taxation regime that the administration is presiding over, then you realize that we will find ourselves in a very difficult situation. As we seek to dig ourselves out of the economic quagmire we find ourselves in as a country, the president and his economic team must proceed with caution and ensure that at all times they give the Kenyan people, and especially those at the base of the pyramid, the necessary help that they need. Thank you.
All right. Omulo?
I think I can see you have good economic advice.
I'm actually quite surprised that there's so...
Yeah, you know, be that as it may, you know, sometimes, you know, for us to fund this ambitious plan of Kenya Kwanza, we must be very, very realistic, ambitious, and innovative. And that's why I say that this is not a government that is lazy. So long as we have good strategies that will not overtax Kenyans. Because furthermore, these blue chip companies are already taxing us. You know, you're paying a lot when you want to transact on M-Pesa. So if they can divide this with the government, so long as we maintain all the tariffs, actually we have nothing to lose. Even in churches, you have to pay tithe. You know, you cannot make sense if you're not paying tithe. So sometimes it is good for us to work hard for our country, so long as we are able to achieve what the government already set for us: production, value addition, job creation, and all this other infrastructure development. So we support the government in this, and I don't see or think that the government has ill intention of overtaxing Kenyans.
All right.
Closing on that kindly, very kindly.
Dennis, sija kusahau.
All right. Oh, Dennis is supposed to come before me, but it's okay. But kindly, I think we also need to look at our expenditure. We need to live within our means. I think the government that was there before William Ruto's government could have gone into spending so much on infrastructure to the point that the country felt a bit of a burden. I saw that the president tried to limit and reduce, you know, the expenditure on infrastructure. Some road contracts were stopped and stuff like that. I think that would be able to come through for us. We have to learn to live within our means. As we go into development and go into infrastructural development, we must look at the weight that the common Kenyan carries, because all this weight is taken to the back of a Kenyan. And when they're shouting and complaining that they're feeling it, I think the government is at a position that they should be able to listen and make informed decisions on that.
Okay, Dennis, the last word.
I wanted to add on what Askan mentioned earlier. If you look at the global index research that was recently done, specifically by the World Bank, Kenya ranks number 189 in terms of global index, a country with one of the highest inequality gap. About 130 people in this country controls about 70% of our GDP, and that to me is so scary. in a population of a working, about 22 million people who work in this country, only 130 people controls more than 70% of the national, rather of the GDP. That is for me so scary. And about 4 people controls 30% of the national domestic product. So in the bid to also widen the tax base, I think there's need to also ensure that the common mananchi, the common person, their needs are put in considerations.
I think that research was done in the previous government. We are barely 100 days in office, and given a chance, within the next 1 year, 2 years, I think we'll move up.
It is good you're mentioning that. About September, the World Bank said that there was increase, about 9% of the increase of GDP in terms of growth of the Kenyan economy, but around December, it reduced to 4.3%. Are you aware about that, Omula?
Of course.
Yes.
We're
so
still settling. All
right. I was trying to find a provision on, you talked about businesses coming to the country. I was going through the KPMG Finance Act 2022 analysis. I look at the Ernst & Young one. There's something that's included in the Finance Act that addresses new businesses to give them time to pay those taxes, or rather to get a return on those taxes within a certain period. But I will leave this for now and take us back to the topic of discussion, or rather the intended topic of discussion this morning. A few tweets have come in already, and then so I see here Flower Child saying Baba kubali tu retirement. When I scroll through, I see Gift Kiongozi says I should be among the panelists. Give her a Professor Lenchodas says at Pimasut, he says book after book will be written how Ruto trounced Uhuru and co. Me, I'm looking forward to reading those excerpts on the Kabarak visits and the politics behind denying WSR Singh MO1. There's a guy here, this is Job Isabai, who says Uhuru Gardens to Kojaba. Jaba inamanisha? Wako tuned, ama?
Mira.
Oh, okay. Fingache Moses says that guy Dennis Ntumbi, he injects fire into political discussions. Consider including him. We will. This forum though is for our young, no, I don't want to call you young ones, but our youth. We get the youth perspective on Fridays. Let me see who else has tweeted. Brenda Kraido asks, what happened to gender inclusion? Question for me.
She has a point.
Johnny says time has a unique way of uncovering secrets. So I think that's a good point at which to transition. Yes? Let's transition now into the topic of conversation. Let me flip through the Daily Nation here, and let me tell you the story I'm really looking forward to reading after this race. This one, the robber falls in love with victim, watches mission.
Yes.
It's on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Like, it just caught my eye the minute I looked at the paper. All right, so again, informing our conversation. In part, IEBC selection panel bill headed to Ruto. Terms of IEBC, 2 commissioners have ended while 3 commissioners resigned. Senate yesterday passed amendments changing the composition of panel to pick new IEBC commissioners. I see here a quote from Oburu Odinga. We are giving the president, who is a player in the election, a hand in the nomination of the panel. And then I see, here it is, topic of conversation. Open servers for audit to challenge whistleblower. Azimio tells IEBC. Coalition says whistleblower's information shows that its candidate won the August 2022 presidential election. This is the data that we asked for in court, but IEBC deliberately sat on it, and they were supported by the courts. But finally, the truth is out. Actually, I thought the argument was by, what is their name? We might the name of Smartmatic, right? I thought the argument was their Azimio wanted the servers opened, but they argued this is intellectual property. Yes. I thought that was the situation. Yes. Not that IEBC deliberately sat on it, but Ascon, the question I asked of my panelists earlier that I will now pose to you is Raila Odinga says Was it on the first page of the Daily Nation? Yes. If you look at that story there, Raila Odinga says it is not too late to get to the truth on the actual votes garnered by Odinga and President William Ruto in the August 9th, 2022 polls. What do you make of that statement that it is not too late?
Well, on the 15th of August 2022, I made my position very clear that I think Raila Odinga has lived a full life in politics. I'm not saying this as though to say that he needs to retire. That is within his, his choices. If he wishes to retire, well and good. But if he wants to continue with politics, still well and good. But I think Raila Odinga has reached, the peak of what his contribution is in the field of politics. When we were watching France versus Argentina with my friends, that was the final match, and they were asking why I was supporting Argentina so much. For me, it was pretty much because I thought Messi needed the cup for self-actualization. And in this election, for me, what was more fundamental is that Raila needed to be president for self-actualization. That was something very fundamental to me. Now that it has not happened, it doesn't mean that Raila is not self-actualized. I actually think he has lived a full life. Having said that, the Azimio leaders need to realize that they are dealing with a very fresh and new breed of political followers who are very deep in intellect and who can apply their mind to situations and get to see if what they are saying is actually correct or not. The kind of allegations that are coming up right now, while they could have some foundation, I think they have not been subjected to some proper interrogation, just as we did with the Supreme Court allegation, the Supreme Court petition. A lot that were being thrown out there by our lawyers were not properly grounded on knowledge of intellectual, IT. What they're claiming right now, that there's some people who would have, gone into the back end of the system and stuff like that. Mara, we have a scanned copy of results that turns into PDF. Those are basic things that even a first year in a computer science class or an electrical engineering class or an IT class will get to realize do not carry some weight. So I think our leaders should stop embarrassing themselves, apply their minds to situation, and maybe look at how we can move forward. We saw this in the US. Trump had very radical supporters that could not imagine that Trump was losing. They went to the extent of invading the most sacred politically or democratically areas of the US. That is understandable. Even in Kenya, we had reached a point where people were really hurt and they could do anything. But as at this stage, we should allow Kenyans to move on. Actually, people like Jeremiah Kioni should be called out. Why? When will the pendulum settle? Or why do they want to keep playing with the emotions of the country? You keep flying it up there and bringing it down here. For what reason? What are they trying to achieve? Because now, for instance, they're talking about maybe this is for political gain, which is okay because they are the opposition that want to keep the conversation going. It is good for Martha Karua. It is good for Kalonzo Musyoka to get some political capital out of it. But I don't think for the followers of Azimio, and particularly followers of Raila Odinga, who've worked with him for a period of 30 years, such simplistic arguments should be presented to them. That is taking advantage and taking them for granted.
All right. Omulo, what do you make of, because the accusations, allegations, bombshells are not coming just from one side of the political divide. There is something President William Ruto said, and a question that followed from Martha Karua. Did I close that? I did. I do beg your pardon. Let me just find her. Here she is. And this is what she posed. Why would such a serious allegation of attempted kidnap and murder of IEBC chair be made 6 months after the elections? And why is the allegation by Mr. William Ruto she doesn't call him President William Ruto, a third party, and not by Chebukati himself? Because ASCON has said these revelations are toying with the emotions, you're saying, of the electorate. This is a very serious allegation, Omulo. What do you say to her question? She's asking, why make it 6 months after the elections? That is, she talks about the allegation of attempted kidnap and murder of Wafula Chebukati. And why by Mr. William Ruto, she asks, and not Chebukati himself?
You see, in 15th August 2022, Ruto was a contestant, and he was very seriously involved in elections. As a deputy president, maybe he was not able to, access intelligence reports. And now he's the president. and he can access all the files and what happened, what transpired during the elections. So as a president, he has the right to tell Kenyans what happened, even though myself or Kenyans cannot verify if it is indeed true there were plans to kidnap and kill Chebukati. But what we know from what we saw on TV, remember Chebukati was holed up in his house on 15th August, 15th of 2022. He called on the religious leaders to pray with him, and they protected him. He told them that there is a reason why I am here, because of security reasons, and I am requesting you to take me to Bomas of Kenya. And they literally took him to Bomas of Kenya. And it is alleged that there were some vehicles that wanted to, to kidnap him, but they realized that the religious leaders are there, so they could not do that. So I believe we are dealing with it was a time where temperatures were so high. It was an octane politics. The state had realized that they are losing, so they wanted to create what we call constitutional crisis. They only needed one more day, so that when Chebukati is not around, then they would have a constitutional crisis where we can form now either a coalition government or they can declare it otherwise. So that one did not happen, and that is why personally I have to thank Chebukati, because he has served for 6 years in an environment that is tricky, environment that is harsh, and politics is very funny, very dynamic.
Okay, but
you're working against a state, and those who have power, they have the security and everything.
Okay.
So if Ruto is saying that they wanted to kidnap and kill Chebukati, maybe he's right, but it is upon Chebukati now to lodge complaints, because that's the only way that you can institute a criminal.
So why then? So you're saying it's now up to Chebukati to launch a complaint?
Yes.
So to make this statement, to what end then? Why would the president get on the podium and make this to what end?
Of course, he's just narrating what happened, what transpired, how the man was threatened and what he passed through. He's already retiring, and it's only important that they tell their stories. So as a president, is important he tells his story. He tells about what happened to Chebukati. So he has all the right to speak to Kenyans on what transpired.
But so you say this is a man now, because you're saying he was DP when all this was going on, so he may not have been privy to all the information.
Sure.
You say now he has access to this intelligence. He's also a man who possesses the instruments of power.
Sure.
So if there was a conspiracy to kidnap and assassinate Wafula Chebukati in order to install a more amenable chair at the helm of the IEBC, and he's aware of this conspiracy, that means they have information, intelligence on who these people were.
Sure.
Is there going to be action taken?
It's not our priority now. It's not in the priority list. But it will come. It will come. Kenyans are saying you form a commission of inquiry. We don't want our attention to be diverted. What has happened?
Let me invite the. So you can see the gentlemen are very keen to jump in. Let Dennis speak.
I want us to stop with this conjecture.
Yes.
And just be realistic. Let's stop assuming and coming up with conspiracy theories of what was or what could have been. Let's just talk about the truth and the facts. Let's lay them bare, because even as we speak today, the president is already the president. There's nothing much that can be done to stop him being the president. This is not like United States of America, where the Department of Justice would come up with allegations and question the president's integrity, and then it is a commission of inquiry is launched on the president's character. This country is very different. With that in mind, the presidency is a coveted position. The president is a symbol of national unity. And on Tuesday, when the president met the independent institutions at State House, he did not speak off the cuff. He was actually reading to a written statement, and meaning that the statement he was reading was well thought through. So then it begs the question, one, what Martha Karua is mentioning, that why is the president speaking in the third person? Because Chebukati as an individual, if there was allegations of him being kidnapped and being murdered, he could have gone to the courts. He has not done that. Number two, why is the president incessantly glorifying Chebukati as a hero? To me, that is suspect, because he's the biggest beneficiary of the outcome. Why is he glorifying Chebukati? Today, as we speak, we had millions of Kenyans who queued on the line to vote, to express their democratic rights. And we have the president, who is the biggest beneficiary of all this process, glorifying Chebukati incessantly. I think we need to lay the facts on the table. We know what happened. This election was bundled, and Chebukati's character is supposed to be questioned. Look at 2013, and then, of course, 2017. The Supreme Court annulled the election. We had Chris Musando was killed. Chebukati did not condemn the murders. He has not come out until today, and today, as we speak, he's being glorified. One thing that really is of concern to me.
Is it fair to say he didn't condemn the murders?
Did he really?
He did?
Did he?
Yes.
It's not about just talking about it on the press.
But
it's not about, as the chairperson of the commission, you're supposed to protect your people. Did he?
All
did
right.
he?
Okay.
Before that.
Quickly, so, and at the risk of Ascot and Kiddy jumping down my throat, we do need to take a break. So just conclude quickly so that we come back with their thoughts on the matter.
Yes. So my concern really is independent institutions and commissions are there for a reason, according to the way Katiba is enshrined. They are supposed to be protected. I was concerned on Tuesday when Chebukati gave the president that report. Why was he giving the president that report? Yeah?
It was his exit report.
Of course.
Exit report. Is it supposed to be given to the president?
Yes.
Because according to... No.
Yes.
There's nowhere in the constitution where that is enshrined. Nowhere in the constitution.
Annually, the commissions actually... Oh, is it a report to parliament or to...
They're supposed to give intermittent reports to the parliament, not to the executive. Why was he giving the exit report to the president? Why?
I would imagine that is the protocol. But we do need to take a break. Kiddy is the legal expert on this panel, so I will leave legal matters to his expertise.
Something before we go, you know, he launched IBC report in public.
Yes.
And President was not invited, but Attorney General was there, the Parliament was there,
yes,
representative. What he did, he shared his report, exit report, during a state meeting.
Okay.
So there's nothing tying him giving an official report to the president, because he's the appointing authority. Actually.
Okay, so we need to take a break.
Is that the appointing authority?
But also let me get your thoughts on the subject. Eunice Githohori Walondiani says, Azimio principle is too late. Acheni tufanyiwe kazi sasa. So she says she's just interested in, in moving on. Cyrus Chege says, but you guys had a whole lorry of evidence that turned out to be hot air. You had golden opportunity to prove your shenanigans at the Apex Court. Those are his views. Cyrus Chege, not mine. I didn't say shenanigans. Okay, so guys here now also responding to the question of taxes. So I will lead us to the break. When we come back, I will give Kiddy Mwaga and Ascon Kamili a chance to respond. Ratego Kevin here says, Olive Barrows, pass my regards to the panelists. I'd wish to know their thoughts on the aspects of electoral transparency, especially within the Electoral Commission and its mandate in ensuring the same without expressing any form of prejudice. Evans Mwanzu, and forgive his language in advance, he asks, why are these imbeciles believing Chebukati and Ruto and not anyone else? These sycophants will not add anything to Kenya. They are mediocre and myopic. So he has said he's not mincing his words. Yes, so I will take the break and then come back with more of your thoughts, as well as Kiddies and Ascons.
are fantastic. Amina Abdirabah here. This Friday, the trend will be on fire.
You know I know what do you want to.
I swear you go there impress you. Not today. Me and you go replay. Sweet lady, I don't go run away.
DJ E on the text, Osoro reading your messages, and me as the host. So what better trio could you hope for? Make sure that you hang out with us on Friday only on NTV.
Me, I wanna know what to
Tazama Q kwenye Rembo TV.
Umeenda wapi? Leave me alone.
Recharge and get upgraded. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Yo, Butruse K, the sharp god up in the mix. Now I'm saying NTV, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked. Hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa fe banga. Another banga.
And it's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today.
Sin koma vitu unanirea.
Oh yeah. Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka tu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninare. Mix on NTV. Don't touch that dial. Not yet. Not yet. No, what?
Welcome to Pop Academy.
Tazama Q kwenye Rembo TV.
Umeenda wapi? Leave me alone.
Recharge and get upgraded. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. When we were on the break, Kidimwaga had already begun his submissions. So on the questions you guys, on the submissions you guys made as far as taxes and productivity are concerned, Dennis Kimuhu says it is all crazy. What are the M-Pesa transaction charges for? Dr. Homer says reduce car duty. I see here Wafula says the government creates jobs, we pay tax. It doesn't create jobs. KRA should create its side hustle to generate revenue. And then Duke of Lakeshire, it was interesting, I was watching an Engaged talk by the former Attorney General Githu Muigai, and he said he was somebody commented and called him the Duke of Ndumberi. So now Duke of Lakeshire asks the whole tax thing, while at the same time dropping cases of tax evaders is his question. And then Omulo Jr. Kihanya says, good morning. Yes, and wow, there are a lot of comments on this subject. Let me just allow me to quickly go through them. Yeah, so Omulo, umepata salamu kutoka Kihanya Mungai. And then we see here Sydney, who's an advocate, or rather his Twitter handle is Sydney Advocate. This is very greedy and predatory, the worst idea I have ever had. This government will kill our economy, Safaricom will collapse, things will go to hell. And at the end of the day, the poor, the real hustlers of Kenya will suffer the most. Then we have, who else? I saw another comment here, Kim Pat, who says, how will KRA differentiate between a 50K dad or a neighbor sends me to buy his cement from and a 50K from a closed business deal? And then this is Kolo OJ, who says, very simple, M-Pesa will lose customers within a month and life continues on hard cash transactions. Then, oh, that was so fast. Felix Osongo says, all right, let's see. I will leave that there. Okay, so he says, Felix says we should get whatever conversation we have on this subject, we all need to ensure that we get our facts right. But Kidi Mwaga, on the questions that Martha Karua and Anthony Kipchumba says we should brace ourselves for turbulence. So Martha Karua asked two questions. Why is William Ruto making these allegations 6 months after the election? And why is he the one making those allegations and not Wafula Chebukati? In all fairness, because that's a question Dennis raised as well. When he was when he was launching the post-election report, Chebukati did say we experienced as a nation the most attempted interference in this last election. And if security agencies were involved in these attempts to interfere with the outcome of the election, then could Chebukati safely, realistically, have launched a complaint with the very same authorities? Kidi.
Olive, let me preface my sentiments by saying, as we are here, we are all young people, and in the last elections, irrespective of the political formations we were in, all of us were serving in the youth leagues. It therefore means that if this country succeeds, it is in our best interest. And if this country goes to the dogs, we will be the greatest casualties. With that background in mind, I will say that great leaders world over are people who used their words prudently to lift their country out of crisis. Look at FDR and during the time of the New Deal. Look at Abraham Lincoln with his Gettysburg Address. Look at all the great leaders, including the inaugural address of President Kibaki at Uhuru Park when President Moi was handing over to him. Where we find ourselves today, I think the president is missing the point when he chooses to become the complainant on behalf of Chairman Wafula Chebukati. If indeed, and this is my considered view, that if indeed there was an attempt on Wafula Chebukati's life, the prudent thing is that at the earliest opportunity when Wafula Chebukati realized that his life was in danger, he should have launched a report to the police so that the police are given a chance to do a thorough investigation. Lapse of time matters, because when there is a long period of time has passed before a complaint is lodged, then there is what in law we call acquiescence. Why did it take Chebukati 6 months to find someone to speak for him in regards to the threat on his life? Chebukati, the day, say, let's make assumptions now, that he feared making these reports, making a report to the police when the previous administration was in office, when the new president was sworn in, and we had a new Inspector General of Police. What stopped Chebukati from lodging a complaint with the police? Because he did not. A right-thinking Kenyan industry would almost want to think that for whatever reason, that there is an attempt to inflame the passions of the citizens of this country to serve political ends. I am of the view again that where we are in, because we find ourselves in a very tight spot economically, we are in a position where as a country we want all hands on the deck. We want the president to have his singular focus in raising this country up from whatever it is, so that, as we had indicated earlier, the young people and the lots of Kenyans who are in what I would call the forgotten corners of this country are then able to smile again. But that will not happen when we have the political class engaging in what I would call, for lack of a better word, asinine political competition. Why do I call it asinine? We have the ruling coalition with the instruments of what I would call the monopoly of violence, that can ensure that our country is called to order, making very outrageous allegations without backing it up with a judicial process so that we see where it is headed. If the president was making these allegations when say there is an active police file, the matter is actively in court, then the people who are mentioned, even by insinuation, would then have a chance to respond. But you see, when you make these allegations in a presidential function, the people who are imagined to have been the said plotters are then left when Kenyans are thinking, was it so-and-so? Was it so-and-so? And it ends up bastardizing people of this country, civil servants, public officers who have dedicated their life and served this country. And no one serves perfectly. We are all mortal men of flesh and blood, and we will fall short. The second thing is the allegation. Now it brings me to the allegation by the coalition I served in the last election, the Azimio team, when they are saying that they have reports that 57%, that our coalition leader won the election with 57%. The question is, where are they getting this from? And you see, this is coming at a time. So my question is, what is the political end that statement was seeking to serve? This allegation is coming when the president had just visited Luo Nyanza backyard. Luo Nyanza, which is the one place that opposed President William Ruto most vehemently. With that visit, we was looking at a country that was on the verge of healing itself from the rift that elections comes with, so that we are, for a moment, able to come together as a country and say, let us move forward as one indivisible nation under God, as the president would love to put it. But then you realize that a section of the political class comes out and make these outrageous allegations, which in my view is calculated to inflame the passions of the people from that region called Luo Nyanza, people who are already attempting to have a cordial engagement with the government and the president. It is my considered view that the political class going forward and taking into account the position we are in as a country, that they must conduct themselves, especially the words they say, must be said with prudence and restraint in the interest of the country. Thank you very much.
All right. Ascon, I will now invite you to make your comments on that.
No, mine was basically just to, in defense of the presentations of my brother Omulo, and equally for the first time in defense of Chebukati. It is not news, or rather you wouldn't say this is something that is coming or we are getting to hear this for the first time. We have seen officials in the IEBC run away from this country. You know, Akombe ran away last time. We have seen some of them lose their lives. Musando lost his life. You know, so these are things that could happen. Chebukati, for all fairness, you know, we remember at the Bomas of Kenya was in a very tight spot. You know, we could see that there was a lot of tension. We could see that there was a lot of you know, acrimony here and there. So it is fair enough to give him a chance to say that he felt at some point that his life was threatened and that his life was in danger. But the question that begs, as my colleagues say, is why too late, or why not, you know, use the proper mechanisms to advance this? But I remember when the president was doing his interview with the media stations, and he was asked the question on why he went slow on extrajudicial killings and police officers who were involved. He had a very well thought response, in my view, because we could see in Nairobi when the police officers who are alleged to have taken part in this were taken to court, there was a general go slow by the security operators in this country, and we saw the level of you know, violence and insecurity meted on the common person. So these are the complexities of governance and leadership that we have to deal with. While the president would have wanted to, you know, go to the bottom of this matter, what is the real response that would come with it? You know, do we see the security apparatus responding in line with his intention? Do we see the most crucial aspects of our governance system respond positively to his intention? So we need to also give the president, you know, the benefit of the fact that he could apply his mind to the situation right now. We know that Chebukati, for any other reason, might be a hero considering where you stand. It could also be somebody you don't want to see considering where you stand politically. But we have to give it to Chebukati for one thing, that this election was better than all the elections except 2002. Why do I say it was better than all the elections? One, I remember before the election, my number one priority was the fact that the results of this election would be announced at the polling station. When we went to court as Azimio, then ODM and the court, and I think NASA, this was some of the prayers we brought to court, and they were granted. Were the elections declared at the polling station? Yes, they were. Now, we asked Chebukati to allow the media, which in our view is, the eye of the public, to have a chance to look at the results at the most basic level. I remember at Bomas when Chebukati was asked to declare the results or to tell us who was winning, he said the results are out there. The media stations are telling them. I don't even understand why they have not declared the president yet. He said that was his response at that time. In my view, that was something so fundamental in this election, as it has happened in other democracies like the US and the rest, where the media are allowed to tally without any interference. Our media did tally, international media did tally, and we had the results with us. So we could only go to the basics of the question of what the results interfered with at the polling station. And that now goes to the responsibility of the candidates. Did you have agents to give you contrary reports? Were you given a chance to verify these reports? We had a whole 1 week given by the IBC at the Bomas that you could present any contrary reports you had on every polling station, to indicate that really your results have been interfered with. We didn't have any. We went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gave us a chance to present what we thought were contrary reports of 35 polling stations that were permitted. Nothing could come forth from this. So for me, I think we need to be very fair to Chebukati and the Commission. So far, so good.
Okay. Yeah. Let me get Mulo's response first before I come to you, Dennis.
I think I agree with my brother. Chebukati is a man who has worked in for the last 6 years. He's a superhuman being. He presided over 2 presidential elections, and a runoff at a time when the NASA brigades were demanding that they cannot have a runoff with Chebukati as the chair of IBC. The state saying that they are very, very disappointed with IBC. He almost resigned. And he has been working in a very serious environment. Politics sometimes, you cannot please everybody. There are losers, there are winners. And it depends with the strategy. Looking at how Kenyans were very peaceful, how they took this result when the result was presented, it indicates that it was free, fair, verifiable, and transparent. It's the most transparent, election that we have ever had in this country. And I can tell you for a fact that the engagement with stakeholders was at the highest level. The media, the suppliers, the political parties, they were given a chance to ask questions and interrogate, interact with IBC. So sometimes, when the president talks and says that his life was in danger, sometimes it communicates. It's a political statement. When President Ruto, promised Kenyans that he will form a commission of inquiry, to investigate state capture, he meant his word, and I know he means his word. But it is not a priority. I know it will come, because those who are involved, look at what happened at Bomas. Those who visited IBC at that time, these are serious people. National Security Council, these are serious people. They are serious people that you cannot just mention today. You don't want to cause havoc and disability, disable the country. So sometimes, he's communicating. He's telling them, no, I've not forgotten. I know what I want. Maybe the things that happened, but a time it will come when we'll investigate these people, when we'll take, we'll bring them to book. Sometimes these people who are doing all these things were still in office. Remember the DCIs, the other people, they have to leave office. You have to reorganize your government. You have to have new people. Sometimes strategies matters. But what I know, we have, Chebukati has done his work, and I believe if we want to talk about independence of IBC or our independent institutions, what matters is the person in himself. We have financial independence, we have the workforce, but the integrity lies with the chairperson. If you have a person who has principle, a person who cannot be moved, because they're intimidated by the state and even the opposition, you know, they can be bribed, they can be told what to do, but you have to stand as a man and protect the integrity of the country. So that is what he did in simple terms. But what we are saying, if there is any criminal, you know, investigations, I know the law is very clear. The president cannot lodge any complaint, but he can speak as a president because he's a politician elected by the people. But Chebukati can initiate, he can, you know, record a statement so that the president can institute criminal investigation through, you know, arms of governments, and you know, all these people can be brought to book. So let us not, you know, build a mountain out of an anthill. You know, this was a political statement. This was a political statement.
Dennis, your thoughts?
Omula said that you stand as a man. I'm asking him, can't women stand to protect the government of a country?
Dennis?
I'm going to be of the contrary opinion with my friends here, especially Ascon and Omulo. If you leave your door open and the thieves come at night and steal your property, should you not complain? Is it your mistake because your door is opened and the thief came and took your property? The thief is supposed to be prosecuted. In my view, just the concluded election, Chebukati at some point disappeared for 9 hours, and then later came and with his own result, without consultation with the commission, announced a presidential result that was questionable, leaving about 26 constituencies without getting the full transmission of the 26 constituencies. Why did he do that? And the question is, who is the biggest beneficiary today? And if you see how he's being glorified with the current regime. Fast forward, if you look at India, India has a population, is one of the countries with the biggest populations in the world, and the registered voters in India is about 800 million registered voters who wake up in the morning to vote in election day. And India introduced digital electoral system where you just select the picture of the person you want to vote for and you click. Why can't we do that in Kenya? If we invest a lot of money in election processes in this country, but every time these results are questionable, because in my view, I think we should have a discussion about this. And because if we are not very careful, this country will be sunk. If you look at one of the greatest progress we've made in this country has been on electoral reforms. And 207, my concern is the Kriegler report has never been implemented until today. Yeah, 207, this country was at the precipice of completely being destroyed. And much of the focus has always been on the structure, the composition of the IBC. Even today, just yesterday, the parliament was debating on the selection panel, on who is supposed to be selecting the commission. What we are leaving out, the key fundamental discussions that we're supposed to be talking about is the electoral system management, so that we have a discussion about this. And moving forward, we conclude on how in future we cannot be able to allow this sort of loopholes to destroy our country. In my humble opinion, I look at the president today glorifying Chebukati, and I think that it's so funny how Raila has lost 2013 election, which we know what happened. 2017, we know what happened. 2022, we know what happened. If a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give Chebukati 1 out of 10.
But Raila has been losing from 1997. I think we should start from
I wish the gentleman on this panel.
Let me just conclude on my thought process.
Chebukati was not there.
You know, that's the question now. Every time we are talking about electoral systems and election management, election day preparations, part of the Kriegler report that concerns me, especially on the election day management, he proposed that party structures are supposed to submit agent's name and then they be trained according to the IBC election preparedness, and then they get to be sworn in. And that has never happened until today. So my humble appeal will be, even as right now we're talking about all this, we know very sure that the tribunal in their report will be able to request for a commission of inquiry to conduct all this. And we obviously know that this will be predetermined. The president has given a position, and even the police or the investigating bodies and the commission of inquiry will not be able to give independent report, in my view.
So what are you proposing?
My proposal would be, we have independent journalists, especially investigative journalists in this country. Yes, we need to have an independent journalist be able to follow through this process. In my view, we will be able to determine, rather find the truth, or rather what happened. Yes.
So nasema John Alan Namu apewe hiyo tena.
Alan Namu apewe hiyo tena.
Kiri Mwaga.
My brother Escon is itching to go before me, but well.
I think next time Escon will insist to sit on there.
Let me say this, my brother Kamili. Olive, in 2017, some of us were engaged in the People Assemblies Initiative together with Professor Ndi, among other Kenyans. What we were pushing through the People's Assemblies was because we felt that the electoral infrastructure in this country, as it was then, was so deeply flawed that if it was not reformed, it was an exercise in futility going to the polls with it, with that electoral body. When the President Uhuru Kenyatta, and his nemesis Raila Amolo Odinga, found a common ground on 9th of March 2018, I will tell you that a lot of, especially young people who supported Raila Odinga, were so disillusioned that some of them who peeled off and started supporting the president now, President William Ruto, like Omulo, with Omulo in NASA, were because of that disillusionment. So when we get into 2018, we failed to reform the IEBC as we were demanding during the People's Assemblies. Now that we have a chance, I don't want to speak to the politics of all this, because if we take that route, we may speak until cows come home to roost. Now that, yeah?
Cows come home to roost.
Until goose comes home to roost. Sorry. I think because I want to believe that the president loved this country the same way we do. Or if I flip the coin, that we love this country as much as the president loves it. And now that we have a president in office, duly and legitimately elected, I would say that for a moment let us come together as a country. The unity of purpose that was demonstrated in Kisumu, Siaya, and Homa Bay, what Senior Orengo was saying, that Mr. President, I will ask you to sit down with your brother, not on the basis of handshake, but on the table of brotherhood. Can we for a moment as a country come together on the basis of brotherhood and say that what is the problem with our electoral system? For instance, can we for a moment be able to audit the elections electronic infrastructure? How does a vote move from a polling station to the National Tallying Center? What is the integrity of that transmission system? How can someone wake up in the morning and say that people of Kenya voted yesterday? Now let us look at how my vote moved. So that even before we speak about agents or lack of them, can we have a system that can ensure the credibility of the democracy of this country? Because, as I conclude, in the words of Winston Churchill, democracy is the worst form of government, save for all the others. Look at dictatorship, look at theocracy, look at monarchy, look at everything else. The only system of government that gives ordinary people a chance to determine how their politics run is democracy. We must preserve the democracy of this country, whether we are in opposition or in government. Thank you.
All right, Ascon. And I was waiting for you to drop the quote.
I think I love the direction Kidi has taken, that we need to look at our election from the point of, you know, this is our country and we need to find something that is, a lasting solution to the problems and the challenges of our elections. That will give us a chance to be objective even when we're having conversations around this. More often, people get to talk about these things with the emotions clearly divided. You know, you're coming from Azimio and therefore you need to advance the intentions of Azimio. If you're coming from Kenya Kwanza, you need to advance their interests and intentions. For one moment, we have a president in office. We need to look at where we think Chebukati and the IBC failed and get to cushion the country from any further failures in the 2027 elections and the subsequent ones. But as I present on that, I think I need to ask another question concerning why the president is not touching on those who are alleged to have interfered with the election. There are allegations that the military at the top was involved in this. These are allegations, right? We saw when the president attempted to touch on police officers who were involved in extrajudicial killings, allegedly. There was a go slow in the entire country, and we felt it, right from Nairobi to deep in the villages. What if the military, because at the top, we are alleging that they attempted to interfere with the elections. What if the military turns against the government? What shall we do? Have we tried to think? Have we tried to imagine situations such as this? So I think the president is in a rightful place to really apply his mind to the situation and see when it will be fit enough to let the country know the truth and how to move forward with the truth. Also, having said that, elections are not as basic as going to the polling station, casting your vote, and waiting for the results. The elections go to the complexity of, do we really believe in our systems? Our constitution, as properly conceived, has a mechanism in which we can get to verify, whatever results that we feel are supposed to be contested. When we talk about our systems in the IT, we have the Supreme Court, which is our biggest prefect in all this. You know, we need to trust our systems and independent bodies. For instance, if the Supreme Court said that we have, we have talked to our registrar, we have assigned people who are going to help you look into the servers, from which then we can be able to understand and know the process that you're claiming could have been flawed. The Supreme Court applied their mind to what was going on and gave us a report. Now, the reason why the Kenyan election is among the most expensive elections in the world is because we actually don't believe in the election. We don't believe in the people who assign the duties of running these elections. When we talk about Chebukati, NASA and Azimio supporters will not believe Chebukati will do the right thing, even when he could be doing the right thing. When we talk about Cherera, Kenya Kwanza and their counterpart and their friends will not believe that Cherera could do the right thing. What we need to do is to reach a point where we can give a chance to our independent commissions to do the right thing. Why I supported Raila Odinga for a very long time is because Raila was very insistent on why there was need to institutionalize our institutions, to give them a chance to flourish, to give them a chance to get established properly. We need to go back to where we started, where we were insisting, as Kidi says, that we need to establish how IBC is going to work. Even when Raila Odinga will not be there, even when William Ruto will not be there, will IBC be working? When we talk about the Supreme Court, will our Supreme Court be working without the Chief Justice today? Yes. We should not be thinking that because the President is there, then he'll be able to arm twist the Chief Justice to direct the petition in our direction. We should not imagine that because Ruto is there, every court case should. Actually, that brings us to the topic of why so many court cases are being dropped. I think the President should address that, because now there's an imagination in the country that because he's now in power, because he's the President, his lieutenants can be able to manipulate the courts. He needs to address that going forward.
All right, so gentlemen, I really do need Kidi, allow, I will be in so much trouble. I have to end.
Let me just say this.
2 seconds.
The spirit of Agenda 4 reforms in 2008, 2009, 2010, giving birth to the new constitution, was that we build institutions that are strong enough to safeguard the future of this country, as opposed to relying on the strength of strong men.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, I will, guys. I really nita letewa nini memo. I do have to end like that, but I will invite you again. Can we agree? Can I invite you again next
Without
week?
a doubt.
On Friday?
Without a doubt.
Dennis, please. Yes. We'll continue the conversation. I will give you a chance.
1 minute just
to mute Mike. Mute. Wananijua very well. Thank you so much for your I'm so sorry, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your contributions this morning. Looking at the tweets. looking at the tweets, I see a lot of people want clarification on mobile money transactions and how it will be used to net tax cheats and tax evaders. So yeah, go to our Twitter handle at NTV Kenya. Mine is at Barrows. You'll get a sense of what people's views are in this conversation. Ooh, I'm so sorry, Dennis and Omulo Jr., NC Director of Political Affairs. We have Dennis Mbanda, who is who is a political analyst, governance specialist. Kirimwaga Ascon Kamili. Good morning.